Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalam. Firstly, I would like to thank MPAC, the Islamic Society of San Gabriel Valley, for hosting us and allowing me to come in here and just share a few thoughts and just share my journey and what led me and my team to actually go ahead and start Sahaba Initiative. I think one of the interesting things about growing up in California or going to high school over here is that I think everyone within that high school phase is trying to figure out their purpose or what they're trying to do. So around like the age of 14, 15, you're always like, okay, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Where am I going to go? And what's the purpose of the whole thing? You're always meeting different people in high school who live, are from this culture and are from different culture, and they always have like some kind of guidelines of what they're going to become. Sometimes it's, what their parents are doing or their family members are doing, and they kind of go down that path. And during that time in high school, I was always thinking to myself, I got to figure something out. And it has to be something cool, too, because I didn't want to do something, and just kind of just do that, and then that would be the rest of my life. And I always thought about doing something like petroleum engineering, but it just, that never worked out. And I had no interest in it, but I was always, okay, that was cool, and I could make a lot of money, but I chose not to do that. And some of the places that I always used to look for, like, kind of guidance and find purpose was always, in the Sunday school or in khutbahs in the masjid. And I think at that time, growing up, the khutbahs at the masjid where I was going to were not that, we're kind of different, to say the least. They were not the same. They're not, they're not the average khutbahs. A lot of times you didn't understand what was being said, and, the speaker would go on for a long tangent, get you really riled up. And I always used to, talk to the speaker afterwards, and I was like, hey, let's do something, you got me all riled up. What are we going to do after this? And they're like, oh, no, well, let's, inshallah, we'll have a meeting. And then when that meeting happens, then we have meeting for like the next 20 years, and then, we're just drinking tea the whole time. And then, I remember also going to my Sunday school, because I always found Sunday school is like the thing that everyone goes to when they're growing up as a Muslim here, and they're trying to figure out, what, the Sunday school can provide for you to kind of live your rest of your life with. And I remember talking to the Sunday school teacher, and he was teaching, us privately. He had about 5 or 10 of us as students. And the stuff he was talking about was interesting, and it was always like, really philosophical, and it was about changing the world. But what I began to realize, it actually had no impact or correlation to the people within our youth group. And I remember in the youth group that we were in, a lot of the people were going out with each other, people were drinking. There was all these different issues, but that was never the topic of discussion, was directly impacting the lives of those students that were in the youth group. And then another avenue for me to really, look at and say, this is what an example of Islam is to me, and kind of choose as a source of guidance was always Muhammad Ali. Because, if you think of, okay, Islam, who's the coolest American Muslim that you could think of? Without a doubt, I think most of us would have to say Muhammad Ali, because, he came from nothing, he was strong, he was articulate, and he shared all these different values that were just amazing. I remember I was like, man, where is this Muhammad Ali that's going to be in our community that's going to just make this change? And I remember going into the masjid one time, and there was this guy laying down, and, let's just say his name was Muhammad Ali. And, you talk to him, and he was like drinking a whole lot of chai, and he was kind of overdosed, taking a nap in the corner. And I was just like, man, let's, he was always in the masjid, and I was talking to him, I was like, let's go out and do something that's inspirational. But, the thing I was fun was, like, I don't know if it was people who weren't unmotivated, or they were just kind of a little too relaxed in their situation where they didn't want to go out and make that, go out and do anything that was, challenging. And I think people have reasons for that. A lot of people grow up in certain circumstances. They have, different baggage that causes them not to, step out of their comfort zone and go out and do something within their community. You talk to a lot of people, and, I was talking to someone about going to a community event one time, and they were just like, I don't know if I'll fit in. It's not, they were just so comfortable and so adapt to just staying in the masjid, and I was trying to force them, or not force them, but kind of talk to them to go on out, but they just didn't feel comfortable. And then also during that time, I was going to high school, so I was always thinking about these things, and I was looking at the situation a lot of my friends around me are going through. And I began to realize that a lot of my friends were not Muslim. We didn't have too many Muslims in my high school. And what are some of the things that my friends were facing within their homes was, parents that were abusive. Some of the parents were alcoholic. I had a friend whose brother was, in front of us, abusing his girlfriend. And I was like 14 years old, and I had no idea what to even do about that. And then, seeing someone else's parents drunk, that's something that wasn't a norm to me, but I had to, kind of see in other people's lives and within the culture around me. And, I remember during that time, I was going out to different lectures in the community and just trying to meet different speakers. And I used to go to the speaker right after, they were done. And I was like, hey, man, I'm trying to do this, and this, and I really want to do something. And the speaker would be really hyped up, but a lot of times the speakers are not local. And I remember there was one talk that I listened to actually by Imam Siraj Wahaj. And, that was actually the first time I met Imam Siraj. And I think there's always those moments you listen to a lecture and it kind of like, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it kind of motivates you and pushes you into a different direction. And for those who don't know Imam Siraj's story, he actually built a masjid in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, with one of the highest, crime and poverty rates. And he, alongside, the law enforcement, the different people in the community, cleaned out one neighborhood just for the masjid where, they bought the land and no one would come into that area, bring in any drugs or bring in anything. And he helped kind of build a jewel within Brooklyn, get people re-motivated, to practice Islam and change the way they were living. And I was so inspired by Imam Siraj's story, doing that, and he was, been doing it for about 20 years, or 20, 30 years. So I decided to go out there and visit his masjid and visit his community. And that's actually me, when I was 15, I went to visit his masjid, and it was it's a little storefront, then you go downstairs, and it has 3 different floors, and the whole street, you just see Muslims, and you'll see people, selling incense, and, selling halal food and everything, and it's a thriving Muslim community, but then you just, step over onto the next street, and it's completely distorted. There's, there's drugs everywhere. And out of respect, the whole community didn't come into Imam Siraj's neighborhood and, sell any drugs or anything because they had so much respect for the way the Muslims were carrying themselves and, and how they were as people. And also during that time, since I was in Brooklyn, I decided to also visit Malcolm X's masjid and the Audubon ballroom where he was killed, just to kind of go through this kind of journey where I was trying to kind of explore what other American Muslims were going through. And, like the person introed, I had an opportunity to live in the Middle East, and I went to a lot of different countries, and I knew Islam really well within the context of the Middle East, but I wanted to see what Islam was in the American experience because there's so much, rich history that sometimes as a high school student you're not exposed to. So when I returned from Brooklyn, I was still thinking, I was what could we do locally in our community to kind of impact change? And I remember I was sitting in the Riverside Masjid, and I was just thinking, I was okay, what am I going to do? And I was taking naps and just sitting there kind of reflecting. It was interesting. Someone came up to me and asked me for help. And I was okay, cool, what did you need? And I gave him a couple of resources, and I told him, this is something in the community that you can get help with. And when I began to realize I spent more time in the masjid, more people started asking for need and for help, and said that we're struggling with addiction, alcoholism, and all these different things. So I said, okay, why don't we with alongside some of the people in the community, why don't we start an NAAA meeting? And then actually we went to the local coffee shop. It was one of the places we first started. We went to this coffee shop over here, and we started having support groups for people in the community. And then as we started, having these support groups, we started noticing people needed more and more needs. So we started connecting with local resources and, helping them out and connecting with the, psychologists and the counselors in the area. And then this is one of the homeless feedings that we did, and we also gave out some jackets. But eventually, as we started growing, we started telling people about what we were doing. We had this opportunity to get a space in San Bernardino where we could provide resources. So this is actually about, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, we first got our first location, and we had, our food pantry and our counseling center and a couple other things over there. And I'm just going to go through a couple other pictures because we're almost out of time. So this is our open house when we started. And then I go to the next slide. So this is actually the garden in the back of our center. That's how it used to be before, and then we built our garden. And that's our resource director who's ready to help people. And then actually our banquet last year, we actually invited Imam Siraj to come and speak. And that was pretty cool. You were all, hanging out with him. Next slide. And this is some of our volunteers. This is more of our volunteers. We're volunteering at a food bank. And just a couple of weeks ago, we actually were honored by the Riverside mayor to come. We spoke. He came and spoke at our dinner. He actually hosted us at his patio on top of City Hall where we had our benefit dinner. So I think that's everything I have to share. My time is up. Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.